What is up, everyone? Joe Writes here once again, and today I've got a special edition of the Writer's Thoughts, and this time we're going to be going over wrestling news. It was a action-packed, fun-filled weekend full of wrestling for both AEW and WWE, so I kind of wanted to give my thoughts, share my opinions on what I saw, what I liked, what I didn't like, and what I want to see going forward. Especially, this is something I look to do a lot more as we get to the fall when AEW is really going to get rolling with their TV show on weekly. We've got Raw, SmackDown, if we've got multiple NXT events. So I really want to kind of get my thoughts out there because I've been watching wrestling for over 25 years, 30, almost 30 years now. And I really enjoy talking about it and kind of going over what's happening, what I'm liking, what I'm looking forward to, and just sharing my perspective on everything. So I'm going to hop into it and start with going over the Fight for the Fallen event from AEW. Now, I did miss the pre-show, so I didn't see those matches, so I won't really comment on those. I think it'd be unfair to go over that when I didn't watch them. But we kicked off with the six-man tag with Joey Janela, Darby Alan, and Jimmy Havoc versus Shawn Spears, Sammy Guevara, and MJF. Now, they were playing up Shawn Spears as the chairman because he just delivered the headshot with the chair a few weeks back to Cody Rhodes. And I kind of like him as a heel. I feel like he fits the company there as a solid hand, as Cody said. MJF really knows how to work a crowd, even if I think his in-ring work needs a little bit of help. And he definitely plays the crowd well. Like I said, the one thing he has been doing is he definitely bulked up. The commentary noticed that, and it looks like he's kind of thickening out. And then you got Sammy Guevara, who's a young guy and very explosive, very exciting. However, I feel like he gets overexcited and kind of rushes his moves at times. So he's got all the athleticism in the world, but he's super young, so he's gonna come along. You've got Joey Janela, who's the hardcore. Same thing, Jimmy Havoc, both hardcore guys. But then you got Darby Allin. I think ultimately, if we look back on this, Darby Allin is the one who will eventually be the star. You saw it in the time limit draw with Cody Rhodes. He showed a lot of potential, a lot of attributes that you look for, and he's one that I would watch out for in the future. The match had a ton of fun stuff. It was a little bit reckless at times. Havoc hit a nice stack superplex. Sammy took a DVD on the apron from Janela, which was really good. And then there was a little bit of tension between Jimmy Havoc and Darby Allin. Allin tagged himself in. Blind tag. Came in, went on a little bit of a run, but kind of disrupted the momentum of the babyface team before Spears ended up hitting him with a Death Valley driver. And this played into Spears taunting Cody later on, as far as they have a match at All Out. And so Spears got a pin on the guy who, even if it was in a six-man tag, on the guy who Cody was unable to. So I thought that was interesting, played into the future storytelling. We might get a match between Allen and Jimmy Havoc, which I think would be a fun match for sure. Havoc seems raw and just seems like a hardcore guy at this point, but I'd love to see them do a little bit more with that as well. See how he grows as a competitor. And MJF also looks to have a match with Spears down the line as he defended his buddy Cody, who we'll see. I think there's a lot of potential for different matches and different interactions that can come from this six-man. So I like that they're building toward the future while still having a fun match, even if it was a little sloppy. The next match, Brandy Rose versus Allie, was really sloppy. This one was definitely one where you could see the inexperience of Brandy Rhodes and also Allie's not being able to fully carry the load. Now, before the match starts, they kind of played up Brandy as almost like a baby face, but then she brings out Awesome Kong, and that distraction later on would pay off as Awesome Kong distracted Allie after Allie had the upper hand, looked like she was going to win. Awesome Kong even pulled Brandy's foot on the ropes at one point. Ended up with Brandy getting the win, which I think is kind of a shame. I don't think Brandy's ready to compete at this level yet. And they're going to really look at that as like pure bias of her just getting that position because she is the wife of Cody, which is unfortunate because I think she is improving. They need to put her in more mixed tag matches and stuff. It looked like Brandy and Awesome Kong were going to attack after the bell, but Aja Kong actually interrupted and squared off with Awesome Kong. There was no blows, but it looks like there's going to be either a tag match between the four of them, Ali and Aja versus Awesome and Brandy, or just a match between Aja Kong and Awesome Kong, which I think would be two big lady behemoths kind of going at it, which would be a fun match, even if they're both a little bit on the later end of their career. Overall, I like I said, I think this match could use improvement. I would hope that for a while they will stick Brandy in tag matches and that kind of thing, just to let her get the experience and start to improve as the ladies start to work together, because there's a lot of talent. You saw in the pre-show, I missed it, but you had Bria Presley, you have a lot of really talented Britt Baker, you have a lot of talented females, so I'd hope they would give those ladies a chance and let Brandy grow. And Ali too is a talented worker as well. So then we had my favorite match of the night. Now this was triple threat tag team match with the Dark Order, Lutra versus Luchasaurus, and Jungle Boy versus Angelico and Jack Evans. Jack Evans and Angelico I remember from Lucha Underground. Angelico does awesome stuff. They're both high flyers, even though Angelico's a big high flyer, which is awesome. Luchasaurus and Jungle Boy I wasn't too familiar with. I've watched some of their stuff, but the crowd loves Luchasaurus, loves Jungle Boy, and you can tell during the match why. And the Dark Order I've never seen before. I've never actually watched any of their matches, but I came away really impressed with some of that, especially some of their tandem moves were really, really cool. We had Stu Grayson, who was a good mix of, he does high flying stuff, he does power moves against the smaller guys. I like where he's able to do a bit of everything, and that was really impressive. Jungle Boy and Luchasaurus and even Marco Stunt, that group has some silly gimmicks, but you can tell they're really over with the crowd, which is awesome. And they're just a lot of fun to watch. Jungle Boy is action packed, all over the place. Can do some high flying stuff. Luchasaurus is a big guy, strong dude who can do power stuff. Does his kickboxing. Had a couple really nice kicks. Some of them were on the slower end, but for the most part, they were really, really cool, and the crowd absolutely loved him. Lucha hit a wheelbarrow into a German suplex, which was awesome. Let's see what else. Grayson had a senton to Jungle on the apron and then landed on his feet, which was pretty dope. It's on the outside. He also got an assisted 450, which was pretty dope. Actually, Jack Evans is the one that did that one. Marco Stunt got involved and did a top rope. It looked like a Hurricane Rana or a head scissors. And then he got tossed to the outside by Junglesaurus, which was pretty cool to watch, even though Marco's a little guy. Before he got kicked out, Luchasaurus did a belly-to-back toss into a powerbomb to Jungle Boy, which was unreal. Like, that was one of my favorite moves of the entire night. And then ultimately, Dark Order hit a... so they had... what's his name? So they had the larger member, I forget his name, but hit a cannonball in the corner while Grayson hit a 450, and then they hit a gory special into a top rope stunner, which was fantastic to watch. So that match was my favorite of the night. I really enjoyed it, and I think the tag team division is going to be what separates AEW for a while. You got Lucha Brothers, you've got Dark Order winning this match. Now they're in line for a potential title shot or title tournament appearance. You've got the Young Bucks, obviously, so there's a lot of potential there. Then we had Kip Sabian versus Hangman Page. Now this match was slower than most I would expect from Hangman. He is normally Seth Rollins-esque in his ability to do high-flying stuff and also do uh, some power stuff and just a wide variety of moves, but he seemed to be slower. They played up his injured knee, and then Kip Sabian really tried to ground him, and while also using some of his own high-flying abilities. Um, it was definitely a contrast. Like it started off much slower, which was a contrast to the previous matches that I had watched in the Fight for the Fallen. So that was I liked that a little bit. Um, Paige re-injured his knees a couple times and still would go for. He did a moonsault where he clearly hurt himself, and then he also power bombed Sabian to the ramp on the outside. So the ramp was up high, so you could power bomb someone like right outside the ring and they didn't fall down. So that was something that a lot of the competitors were using to their advantage. Um, and then he hit a top rope twisting neckbreaker that was really good from Paige. But then Sabian came back with a twisting dragon screw between the ropes. Um, and yeah, there was a little bit of back and forth, but ultimately Sabian was hit with the Deadeye from Hangman. Hangman ends up winning, and then Jericho attacks. Jericho, dressed like one of the Dark Order minions, ended up coming up, hitting a code breaker. Obviously, that gave away who it was, and busted open Hangman, actually. Now, what was interesting is the crowd was actually chanting "Thank you, Jericho" at the end of that. So you're already starting to see the fact that Hangman is one of the elite. His push is almost Roman Reigns esque in that the crowd is not really believing that it's organic. They think he's being pushed because he's the chosen one from All Elite. So that'll be really interesting because they may want to adjust and give him some hardship, give him some problems, or turn him heel if they're going to really give him a big push and make a corporation type faction, because it doesn't seem like the fans are 100% behind him at this point. Even though he's super talented, I think he's a very good wrestler. So I hope that they fix that and get that right. Even though Jericho's playing up the heel in this particular feud. Then next up, what we had Lucha Bros versus SCU. This was a solid match. Not the best Lucha Bros match, but a lot of fun. SCU can really entertain, and they do a lot of things right. So they're great. They can match up against anybody, and that's why I think this tag team division is so great. You have Christopher Daniels, who can slip in between any of the SCU members, but this one was Kazarian and Scorpio Sky versus Pentagon and Phoenix. Pentagon and Phoenix are probably my favorite tag team on the planet right now. And yeah, Pentagon and Scorpio squared up. They were fighting. There was a super kick fest at one point that we've seen the Lucha Bros use quite a bit. We had Daniels got attacked, but then he had a Arabian moonsault on the outside before he got kicked to the back. And yeah, there was a wheelbarrow bomb which got a 2. There was a series of strikes. Phoenix actually, I think, is underrated because Pentagon is so good. He walks the ropes really well. He can hit high flying stuff, but just their tandem work is unbelievable. Eventually, we had a Pentagon hit a Canadian destroyer, which was awesome, followed by a Packard Pile Driver while Phoenix hit the double foot stomp off the top for the victory. What was interesting is afterwards, the Lucha Bros grabbed the ladder, which was all in all elite colors, took out Daniels, took out Kazarian and Scorpio Sky, climbed the ladder, cut a promo challenging the Young Bucks at All Out to a ladder match. Obviously, that won't be for the tag titles, but it's probably setting up a future challenge for the titles. And the Young Bucks are 2-0 right now against the Lucha Bros within All Elite competition, so that'll be super interesting to see. I would imagine the Lucha Bros go over in that one and get a title shot, just so the Young Bucks aren't getting the title shot right away. But either way, that should be a fantastic match. I'm really looking forward to that, and I'd love to see them against all the other, a lot of the other tag teams in the AEW. Like I said, there's a lot of potential there. So then we had Cena versus Kenny Omega, which was another fantastic match, hard hitting. Cena went to the well a lot with his Meteoras. I had not seen him wrestle either. He's very good. Well, I've seen him wrestle, but not that often. He's very good. And Kenny Omega is obviously one of the best. And when he's in these hard hitting, quick bouts, that's when he really shines. Cena showed off some of his technical prowess with some, basically some submission moves, some weird lucha libre action. Like, he did a lot of variety, which I think will win him over. He'll be a good, at least a mid-card player to start with, which I think is great for AEW. They're a little lacking in that. But Kenny Omega goes over with his One-Wing Angel after a couple V-triggers. And yeah, I think this was the first match we really got to see Kenny Omega shine in AEW so far by himself, and we're going to see this even more when he faces Moxley at All Out. I think that's going to be the match of the night. That I can't imagine that being a bad match at all. Then there was Jericho cutting a heel promo. Hangman came out. There was a fight, a pull-apart brawl. I thought that was solid and setting things up. And you could really see Hangman was busted open, so that was good. I thought that was pretty effective. Now, the main event with the Young Bucks versus the Brotherhood, they were calling them, and that one was interesting because I didn't think it was the best Young Bucks match. I think there was a lot of nostalgia. There was a lot of the Dustin Rhodes trying to get back at the Young Bucks for their lack of respect, basically. And the match was good. It was a really solid match, but it wasn't kind of what you would expect, especially with... there's so much talent within the AEW tag team division that this was not... Cody and Dustin haven't wrestled in a long time, so this was more about it being a spectacle as much as it was a technical quality tag team match. Cody's a solid worker, but Dustin has obviously lost a step. Although I think he looked fine. Like, I think he didn't stand out as being bad in the match necessarily. I just think that AEW is going to, if they want to separate themselves from WWE, they need to give some of the young, exciting talent the main event time to shine. It can't just be the Bucks. It can't just be Omega. Although Omega versus Moxley will probably, or Lucha Bros versus Young Bucks will probably main event the next one, which makes sense. But they need to capitalize on their young stars and give them a chance to shine. Otherwise, they're gonna just fall in the same traps that WWE falls into often. And we're gonna get to that later when I talk about Extreme Rules, because oh my god, that was... Extreme Rules was wild. And so they ended the night. Cody Rhodes cut a promo calling out WWE basically for counter programming with their Evolve show, and they gave a check for the Jacksonville gun violence victims. So that was really good of them. But overall, it was a really, really good show. It was a lot of fun. There was some inexperience you can see from some of their guys as they start to get into these bigger events, but that's only natural, and I think they'll grow from it. Other than that, I'm very excited about some of the potential that they have, and I can't wait to see more of what goes down. So, let's see. Then we got WWE. Now, Extreme Rules was a very fine show throughout. Like, I enjoyed most of the matches. That being said, some of the results were weird to me, and the ending was very, very disappointing. Shinsuke started off in the pre-show winning the Intercontinental Championship from Finn Balor, which is so out of nowhere. I don't mind the result in a vacuum. The problem is, Finn got a big win at Mania to win the IC title, right? Shinsuke just gets off of splitting up, I guess, from Rusev, and all of a sudden now he's singles competitor right back into the title scene out of nowhere. He didn't earn it. There was no matches. That was one thing AEW played into a lot, is that they were saying that wins and losses will matter, and it's clear WWE doesn't care anything about wins and losses. It's all about who kind of steps up to opportunities, which is kind of frustrating because how do you make feuds matter if they wins and losses don't matter? You can lose a feud and then jump right in the title scene, I guess. I don't know. It doesn't make sense to me in that regard, and that's a little bit frustrating. So yeah, since Shinsuke, it was a solid match. Like I enjoyed the match in a vacuum, but Finn winning, losing his title after such a mediocre title reign, and not really getting a chance to shine is super frustrating, and tacked on with other results tonight just has me very confused. It seems like I don't know if they're just trying to shift fully for when Heyman and Bischoff take over and just kind of wipe the slate clean of with champions and just try to find who they want. But that was kind of frustrating because I'm a big fan of Finn Balor, and I think that was did him a bit of a disservice. We had Drew Gulak over Tony Nese in a match that was fine. It was a typical cruiserweight match, although that cruiserweight division has been shredded with the loss of Buddy Murphy and Cedric Alexander. So these matches kind of get repetitive. It's hard to get excited about them at this point, although they do put on solid matches all the time. You just don't have the personalities on 205 Live right now to keep that show going. And I wouldn't be surprised if it's canceled sooner rather than later. So they kicked off the show with Undertaker and Roman versus Shane McMahon and Drew McIntyre. I was very hopeful for a KO appearance on this one, and I think it was a missed opportunity not having him show up. The match was good. The match was solid, back and forth. Too much Shane McMahon and his terrible punches, in my opinion. Although he did his spot off the top where he got the elbow drop onto the table of the Undertaker, and then he did his coast to coast onto a trash can for the Undertaker. They kind of showed Drew doing a lot of the domination, which was good, I think. And maybe it is setting up a feud with Drew versus The Undertaker down the line or at SummerSlam. So that's something that we'll have to wait and see. That being said, when Elias came out and attacked and they put Taker through the table and everything, and then he sits up, chokeslams Shane after chokeslams Elias, and Roman spears Drew. Tombstone to Shane for the victory. I liked the match. It was fine. I wish they would use these opportunities to build stars. And this was just a showcase of Roman and Undertaker. Drew can use some push because he's lost a lot recently. Kevin Owens would have gotten a huge pop and a nice rub if he had come in and hit Shane and Elias with stunners. I think that would have benefited them more than just a clean, simple win for Undertaker and Roman in the long run, because neither of them need it. Like, it doesn't do a WWE any benefit unless they're setting up a Roman title run and SmackDown, and I think that's going to get booed very badly from the fans. So I enjoyed it as a match, but again, in a vacuum only. Looking at the bigger picture is frustrating for me at times, especially with WWE. Then we had the Revival versus the Usos. I thought this was a solid tag team match. Looking back at the Fight for Fallen tag team matches, I kind of wish the WWE would get a little bit more innovative with what they allow their tag teams to do. Some of their tosses into the teammates to do moves. I wish they would let them kind of go a little bit more and explore a little bit more of that. That being said, it was a solid match. It was back and forth. I kind of was expecting the Usos to come out of this on top, the way the Revival's been treated lately. But I do like that they actually won clean with the Shatter Machine, and it legitimizes them a bit more than they had been recently. They beat the Usos, who are one of the best tag teams in the WWE, after being embarrassed for months now, basically. They lost some bad matches and stuff, even as champions. So I really like that they did that. I think that's a good step in the right direction for them as a team. And having them be kind of arrogant lackeys of Shane is not necessarily a bad thing as long as they still perform in the ring. You know, making them look goofy, I think, is not good for the tag team titles. That was another thing that I forgot to mention. I was so disappointed. The Intercontinental title was on the pre-show, which makes no sense to me because it's an Intercontinental title. You got to build that title. If Finn loses that on the main show after a match where he looks like a star, that's fine. But to put that on the pre-show, and a lot of people probably missed it, is so frustrating and just makes no sense. It might work out in the end with their feud, but it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Anyway, back to the Revival. I thought the Usos did their solid match. Sometimes their matches can be too by the books with the Revival, not the Revival, with the Usos. And they do a lot of the same maneuvers, kind of similar to what Roman Reigns does. But that being said, I thought it was a lot of fun, and there were some creatives ways to set up their various moves, even if they weren't the tandem offense that I like to see. They played up the Revival as sneaky heels, which I do like as well. So, next we had Bayley beat Nikki Cross and Alexa Bliss and did so clean, which was interesting. There was no Sasha Banks appearance, which was rumored. Yeah, and it was just kind of a hard fought match. Some back and forth of the heels, Bliss and Cross kind of using whatever tactics they could to try to get an advantage. Bayley looked like the valiant baby face. And ultimately, Bliss went for a twist Bliss. Bayley got the knees up. Cross then got tagged in and went for a top rope move, got hit with a knee. And then got the elbow drop for the win for Bayley. The back and forth was pretty solid in this match. I will say one of the major advantages that WWE has over AEW right now is that their women's division is deep and they have a lot of experience. The AEW women's scene has a lot of talent, but it's clear their experience is not there, and definitely working together is a little bit lacking. So I can't wait to see them kind of work together more, and when they have their weekly shows and stuff like that. But right now, Bayley is a lot cleaner than a lot of the other women's wrestlers out there. Obviously, Becky Lynch is probably the best. But yeah, so I thought she looked really good. It really legitimizes her as a champion, and I would love to see Sasha come back and challenge her and give her a good feud as well. Hopefully that's something that happens, or if she comes back and challenges Becky. Either way, I'm kind of interested in see where that goes going forward. Aleister Black versus Cesaro. Now, this might have been the best match of the night, in my opinion. It was kind of expected that Aleister Black would win. They'd kind of been building him up. But they hit some really fun moves. Cesaro hit, caught a Meteora from Aleister Black, tossed him up, hit him with the uppercut for a close count, hit his diving uppercut. They had a lot of back and forth. Aleister Black with a lot of strikes and knee strikes and kicks and all that kind of good stuff. Really showcased each other's abilities. I think both of them looked really good in this particular match, which is what you want to see. And ultimately, after a uppercut exchange with Cesaro got the best of for the most part, Aleister Black came back, series of kicks, hit him with the black mask, knocked him clean out, and got the pin. Good showcase for Aleister Black. Cesaro still looks like a solid heel who answered the call. So he's not like a cowardly heel, which I think is good because you have enough of those in WWE. So I'd be interested to see where Aleister Black goes from here. Hopefully he's challenging maybe Shinsuke for that title or going on to fight other big name, maybe Drew McIntyre or somebody like that. So that's super interesting. And I can't wait to see it. Hopefully they build on it. The problem with WWE is they take one step forward and two steps back oftentimes when they're trying to build their wrestlers, and that's something that they definitely need to improve on. Braun versus Lashley was exactly what it needed to be. Big powerhouses, big hosses, kind of just battling back and forth. You had Braun take the upper hand at first, then Lashley hit a spear and changed the game. He started taking over. They brawled through the arena. They slammed each other into all kinds of things, including the wall and barricades and all that stuff. Lashley slammed Braun through the barricades at one point and knocked it down, which was a really cool spot. They fought up the steps. Huge back and forth. I thought that was, if you're going to have a house battle, this is what it needs to be. It needs to be an all-out war with both guys looking just like they're just going full slobber knocker, if you bring it back to good old JR. So I thought that was good. I thought that was exactly what it needed to be, and it kind of reignited Braun in a way. I would love to see where they go with him now, and if they can build on that. Again, that's what they need to do. Is who he fights next is very interesting. Where he goes, same thing with Lashley. Lashley doesn't come out of this looking so bad. Ultimately, Braun hit a power slam off of like a I don't know what it was. It was kind of like a balcony basically into some, I don't know, tables, or it was hard to tell what was down there. Anyway, he hit the power slam and then busted through particle board door wall, I would say, and got the victory for the last man standing. I thought this was, like I said, if you're gonna have a match like this, that's exactly what it needs to be, and they played it out pretty well. Next up, we had New Day versus Bryan and Rowan versus Heavy Machinery. Fun tag match. Kind of the same thing we've been seeing from these teams. Nothing out of the ordinary for the most part. Heavy Machinery are fun. They're better than they were in NXT, which is strange. But they seem to be well liked by the crowd. Their moves kind of pop off. You had a fun spot with Otis looking like he was going to do a dive through the ropes, but instead stops and does a little jump off the apron. But then you had Tucker jumping off the top. So they try to really play up his athleticism, but sometimes it doesn't come off. This match I thought was fine. Bryan using a lot of heel tactics, some submission holds to try to get the advantage. Towards the end, you had Heavy Machinery going for a double superplex onto Rowan. Big E gets involved, ends up powerbombing the Heavy Machinery off of the top. Rowan stays up top. Bryan had tagged himself in. Big E hits a superplex on the Rowan, which was a pretty cool spot. And then ultimately what ends up happening is Bryan gets the advantage on Big E, but then he starts kicking him. And ultimately Big E kind of hulks up, and then Bryan starts slapping him, which was a big mistake. Bryan goes for his little backflip off of the rope to jump over his opponent. Big E catches him midair, tags in Woods. They hit the midnight hour. New Day is the new tag team champions. So potentially we have the whole of the New Day as champions currently. And we'll just have to wait and see how the Kofi Kingston match turns out. But that was awesome. We also had, at one point, we had Heyman come in and say there was going to be a cash-in. He promises, but he could be lying, but it might happen. And we'll find out how that turns out as well later on. Plays up the fact that he is Philadelphia, he is ECW and Extreme. Or he's Extreme, not ECW, which was kind of interesting. Before, we also had the Street Profits again in a backstage segment earlier in the night, which they really seem to be pushing into them. I hope they don't make them duplicates of the New Day only on Raw. So we'll see where they go with that. But they are very entertaining. I like their segments. So next we had AJ Styles versus Ricochet, with AJ Styles being accompanied by the Club. Now, this was a good match. Like, these two probably couldn't put on a bad match if they tried. You had Ricochet kind of overcoming the odds. He was attacked before the bell by the club, Gallows and Anderson, and already starting off in a rough spot. Uh, Ricochet hasn't had the belt that long, so I was hopeful that he would retain somehow. But what ends up happening is AJ gets hit by a shooting star press, but Anderson shows that AJ's foot is under the ropes, so the ref doesn't count to 3 on that one. Another distraction by Anderson as he was going for his 540, or yeah, he was going for his finisher. Ricochet was, but Carl Anderson gets involved. He gets taken out by Ricochet, but then Gallows pulls the leg out of Ricochet from the top. AJ Styles goes to the middle rope, hits him with a mid rope Styles Clash 1, 2, 3 for the title. And yeah, the club is back. I'm really excited to see what the club does. I like them as a unit. I think they can do some awesome things. I really am frustrated by some of these title wins and then just bouncing the titles back and forth. You have Ricochet, you have Finn Balor. It just doesn't make sense, honestly, to have these guys that are fan favorites who could go on solid runs and build up the credibility to just take their titles right away. I feel like this is something you could do in 2 months and it would have been just as effective, and you could have given Ricochet a couple of legitimate title defenses first. So I'm kind of disappointed by that. We'll see where they go. It's just ultimately, I have no problem with the club and AJ Styles having that belt, and hopefully they really legitimize Gallows and Anderson going forward. Then we had Dolph versus KO in what was a super short match. They play KO's pipe bomb like promo. Dolph comes out, slaps KO as soon as the bell rings. KO hits a stunner, wins the match 1, 2, 3 in like seconds, and then drops another promo about Shane McMahon, and kind of, it'll be interesting. That's definitely going to be a feud going forward. It'll be interesting to see if they end up clashing at SummerSlam, which is what I would imagine. But yeah, that was an extremely short match. Then we had Kofi versus Samoa Joe. And what was a standard Samoa Joe match. He dominates most of it. Puts the pressure on Kofi Kingston. Really attacks him from the beginning of the match. Kofi fights back a little bit. Escapes the Coquina Clutch at one point and then hits Trouble in Paradise for the victory. I enjoyed the match, but it wasn't anything to write home about. And again, this is another example of Samoa Joe losing his title and immediately attacking Kofi to get a title shot without having seeming to earn it. And the buildup was good for what they had, but it was so quick and over so fast that I feel like this is a feud that would have benefited from having a month and a half, a little bit longer to develop instead of just being rushed like it was. It was a good moment for Kofi when he gave Joe the middle finger, and he did it again at the pay-per-view, showing his fight back and never say die kind of attitude, which is good. I think building Kofi like that is awesome. And they didn't cash in with Brock Lesnar on Kofi, even though Hangman had said he might on either champion. Then we had the main event, which was Becky and Seth versus Baron and Lacey. Lacey Evans had Seth on her trunks, which was a nice slap in the face. So this one started off kind of normal battle between Seth and Baron. A little bit of fight. Kendo stick got involved. Seth used the kendo stick on Baron Corbin. And then eventually Baron and Lacey get the upper hand. Actually after a while, so Becky and Seth both use the kendo sticks. Eventually, the heels get the upper hand. They're able to use some weapons as well. Some chairs get involved. It was a fun Extreme Rules match. Again, I'm kind of over Seth versus Baron Corbin. And then Lacey, I don't think is ready for this position on the card. Although she looked better than she has at some points. She had a nice moonsault. She had a nice power move that was pretty cool. Towards the end of the match, Seth and Becky get some tables involved, put the two heels through the tables, and Seth rolls Baron back into the ring. Baron ends up knocking off Seth and then hitting Becky with the End of Days. Now this infuriates Seth. He goes wild with a kendo stick. He hits 3 stomps while Lacey retreats up the ramp because she saw how crazy he was being. And Seth ends up winning, retaining both of the titles. Then Brock Lesnar's music hits. He comes down to the ring, hits a couple German suplexes, cashes in the Money in the Bank title, and hits a F5 to win the championship. And my God, was this the worst possible ending to a solid pay-per-view. I enjoyed this as much as I probably did Fight for the Fallen. I thought they were different, but I enjoyed both events. That being said, I am completely over Brock as champion. I don't care if it's only for a couple months. WWE does not seem to want to let anybody leave a pay-per-view happy. Like, it's almost impossible to do that for the most part. And this is such a shame because Seth's title run was only defenses against Baron Corbin. He never got a chance to really prove why he's the best, why he's the workhorse, all that kind of stuff. And it's so frustrating. Brock didn't need this belt. They could have given him this title shot at SummerSlam, given an up-and-comer the Money in the Bank briefcase. They could have had him just fight for the belt at SummerSlam after Seth gets 5 months of title defenses against quality opponents instead of Baron freaking Corbin the whole time. The whole picture doesn't make sense. You can have Brock challenge for the title, even win the title. But the reason WWE isn't able to build stars is because of stuff like this. Every time Finn wins he won the title, and then he has barely any title defenses against quality opponents before he drops it. Ricochet, same thing. He had a good match with AJ Styles, but he didn't defend the title at all before losing it. You have Finn Balor had previously beaten AJ Styles a couple years back and then loses to Kane the next night. They don't capitalize on momentum. Seth Rollins should have been your biggest star after WrestleMania. You should have had him facing other big names. Whether it's start with Bobby Lashley and Braun Strowman and even Roman Reigns challenging him, whoever it might be. Just to have him only beat Baron Corbin and then lose the title already is a travesty, and the exact reason why 5 years from now we'll be looking at WWE and wondering why, with all this talent, they can't build new stars. It's just the bottom line. That's what they do. They don't know how to fix it, and I don't know if they'll ever get it right. That's my rant on that subject. I think AEW will benefit from learning from WWE's mistakes. I really hope they do, because WWE as a product can be infuriating because they can get some things so very right and other things so incredibly wrong. I don't care how big a draw Brock Lesnar is right now. You are hurting the company in the long term by keeping him as your champion and by having him beat Seth Rollins after a very poor title run. That's just my opinion. That's what I think. I hope that they right the ship. Maybe at SummerSlam he loses the title. Maybe he doesn't, and then I can just watch NXT and AEW full time. We'll see. Who knows? But that have been my thoughts. Those have been my thoughts on. I'm so flustered right now. Those have been my thoughts on wrestling for the weekend. I hope you enjoyed it. If you did, like, subscribe, all that standard jazz. My name is Joe for Rights, and I will catch you guys later.